Let's begin with Tom and Ben, please. Oh, the whole sheaf.
Yes.
Is the one on top what you would most like to do?
I think so, yes.
I'm a great psychologist in that way. Start, however, with, we'll get to Fidele. I just want to hear a bit of À présent rêve. We ought to have time to do Fidele. The thing about French song generally and about Fauré in particular is that the type of leaderish responding to situations as they come up, allowing your feelings to mold things, allowing the tempo to change through your emotions is not the correct approach. The only thing that you have to see and realize with wonder is this song doesn't stop, if you look at it harmonically, from A to Z. It never actually comes to a clearing like a lot of lieder do, where you say, oh, that's the end of part one. Now we do part two. It's one single thread. And the effect of it and the beauty of it is in its totality, not in any particularly highlighted sphere. This is true for Fauré generally. There are many stories of him accompanying this and insisting on a tempo which left him finishing 3 bars before the singer had got to the end. Because, let's face it, it is a tune that encourages, God, this is a beautiful, beautiful song. It's actually, I don't know, that's like going into a French patisserie and getting a big fat American donut. You know, no mi-feuille, no raffinesse. When Schubert visited the Wagner Villa Wahnfried, he was offered a concoction by Cosima Wagner that he considered was so inedible. Quelle cochonnerie, he said. He slipped it into a drawer where the master's shirts had been kept. He then proceeded to break the piano playing España to Cosima's absolute horror. So there was actually almost iconic meeting of French and German culture. If I go like this, let me just play a minute. Go on. That's how it's got to sound. And you don't want your pianist tentatively waiting for every little inflection that you may throw up in the spur of the moment. There's a certain type of music where that can be appropriate. But it's nothing, very often singers, when they're like that, it's not planned and it's not necessarily effective. It's just a result of them dragging, because to drag is the singer's O blood group. It's actually, the rare singer hurries, but that's a very exotic singer, let me tell you. Most singers schlep. Now all you have to do is to sing it dolce, as if it's dans un sommeil qui charmait ton image. Dreamily and quiet. It goes louder, but this is all pianissimo. And if that's your pianissimo, if that's your piano, try a bit softer. Exactly. You've been suffering from that thing that lots of singers suffer from, in the sense that they feel that whatever song they sing, they've got to present their carte de visite somehow as a voice capable of this, that, and the other. When it's not required, you don't have to use it all. You don't have to show us that we could cast you in some operatic role because you've got the size to get over, the size of voice to get over an orchestra. You don't have to prove that in every single piece you do. Horses for courses. This is a salon piece. It was wildly, wildly popular. It was originally a Tuscan poem from the same set of poems that Wolf used for his, that Heiser used to create the poems for the Italian songbook of Wolf. And so it's got an Italianate thing, but those Italianate singers who tend to use it because it's very attractive tend to get it all wrong as a piece of foray. Once you begin, it's like the composer himself. He goes on at more or less that tempo, and he doesn't stop because you want to do a little this or a little that or a little hesitation or a little anything. It goes. So actually, in a sense, you've got to be a little more obdurate.
Yeah.
You've got to be a little bit more determined to see. When you visit a Leeds, you often go through the cottage door, you look at the ground floor, you look out of the window, you see this, you see that, you climb the stairs to the next level, you see the view. In French song, you fly over the cottage. You see it there as a totality. You don't go exploring.
Yeah.
And it's something to do with temperament, it's something to do with taste, it's something to do with national qualities. The Germans have always needed Weltschmerz, they need Sehnsucht, they need to feel this Innigkeit, and that often is expressed in terms of messing around with rhythm, particularly in late 19th century music. Not in Schubert, however. It was something that developed as the century grew on, and by the end of the century, early recordings showed the most incredible rubato that are no proof whatsoever of how people sang songs in the 1830s and 40s, just how they sang songs in the 1890s. So actually, it's just a question of the simplicity, the elegance, and really feeling that you're making a thread of music that goes like this and comes to the end at the end. There's no moment where there's a stationary cadence and you think, first verse, now the second verse. It's just a single piece of music, which isn't the same with fiddle. So let's do a bit of that.
This
Thank you. I'm going to make some general observations rather than go through some of the French, because that's easy. I'm really much more concerned with the architecture and the fastidiousness of what French composers want. For example, there's no sign or any permission for you to make a massive writ at the end just because you feel like it. There's no retardando marked. And the thing is that, did you realize that the last section is the same tempo as pum, 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 pum? Yeah. Well, it wasn't. Dum, ba, ba, ba. You'd actually got, the last tempo was nearer the right tempo. The first tempo, although it says long, is much, it really has to be the same tempo as go po, bum, 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 bum. And remember that he's impatient. He's not making massive delay. It isn't actually part of what the poem means, because out of consideration and in belief that they're going to make a better kind of love by allowing her to rest, he's just giving her the moment. It's not sleep for the sake of it, because the evening star of Venus is going to come, and he's going to actually reap his reward. And this is the extraordinary job that Duparc accomplishes in French music in 1870. In the 1870s, he brought into French music a quality of the German Lied, not the qualities of Brahms. He was a great Wagnerian, and he visited Bayreuth, like Chausson, like Debussy, like Fauré. They all went to Bayreuth. They all knew Wagner by heart, but they didn't necessarily directly imitate. But he brought something of the gravitas of the German Lied into French song. The L'Invitation of Voyage, the poems of Baudelaire, La Vie Antérieure, all these are important songs. And this setting of Fidele, the same type of Greek nymph as Fauré's Lydia, and similar poems in Reynaldo Hahn's Etude Latine. So the actual, let me just show you a few things. The actual thing is this. If you are going to go actually take it's pause and dum, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, not pause. You're giving the good old bit of Germanic sentimentality into something that has to be not only French but Greek simple, like the model of the Parthenon, like the simplicity of Greek robes. It's dépouillé. Okay, so allié. Sorry, all right, repos, same tempo. Avoid that thing of going. To show that you care. You don't need to show that you care. It's just written as a pattern. It's a very beautiful simple phrase. It doesn't have to be, you'd never get a conductor being able to get that type of rubato that you're doing from a violinist. And in any case, this piece is conceived quite orchestrally. So it's and then you go re, eight time beat. You're talking about a scene here, the bees. We had albatrosses by The climax is very murmuring. When it says more forte, it doesn't mean forte, it means a bit louder.
Okay, yeah.
So it's all very, very, very still sleepy. Buzzy. Cutting it up into too many pieces.
Yeah.
It's got to have one thing. And that little episode with all those 16th notes doesn't have to be a heroic excerpt from Siegfried. It's actually far too grand and far too... You see, and so by the time you actually get the final repose at bum, 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 bum. Do you know that when a baritone sings loud, there is inevitably a feeling of anger and violence that can be inherent. Finding a fullness of tone that isn't colored with eritou. No.
Yeah.
It's just a fullness avec ampleur, he writes, forte, and it should still be with the same gentle longing. You are not a brute. You are letting the girl sleep. You are not doing anything inappropriate with her without her consent. This is absolute politically correct stuff. You are waiting for the right moment.
Yes.
So your longing should be there. It shouldn't actually be about, you shouldn't necessarily have to show off how loud you can sing.
Okay.
And so we start to, just go mécompte. I've lost it, sorry. It's the same place. Interesting. The whole point of this is that me récompense, and then you actually display your impatience through the crescendo of l'attente.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
If you've thrown it all, come on, you haven't got anything for that incredible moment of setting off the postlude as your crescendo.
Yeah.
Getting the unity of it, the essential French piece of engineering that is incredibly more simple and refined than a huge, great big German steam engine.
Yeah.
It has something, what the French call clarté. It's got a certain romanticism, but it's not a German romanticism. It's a French romantic streak of incredible delicacy and refinement.
Yeah.
And if you just realize that the piece, again, it's similar to the La Présence, you've got to look for where the unities are. You've got to make it architecturally sound like a single piece. And being able to sing an F sharp other than all out, that's the sign of growing up.
Okay.
You know, as an F sharp, that's my F sharp, sorry.
Yeah.
But actually being able to sing any dynamic of any note at any vowel is the sign of the master singer.
Yeah.
And when you get an F sharp, oh, it's an impressive F sharp, I give you that, but it's actually, for this context, not appropriate, because it actually sounds angry. Not angry, but it sounds passionate in not the longing type of dreamy way that the poet means.
Yeah, okay.
There are some strange vowels and diphthongs, but actually what you have to do, and this is important for everybody, is that the singer, what is the difference between opera and lieder? Is it because it's got to be smaller? Is it because it's got to be more refined? Is it because... No, there's only one difference. There isn't a guy there like this.
Yeah.
That's why so many youthful singers, when they start, they sound like they're in a Sitzprobe, because they haven't had the lighting, the production, all the type of things like makeup and costume, and which the piano has got to provide. It's all got to be provided, and both of you are standing in for the conductor and keeping a judicious shape going. And there are many opera singers who've got this to help them all their lives, and when that's not there, they're lost.
Yeah.
So you've got to actually look at this piece as a very simple piece of Greek architecture, with the same tempo at the beginning as at the end, with an effulgence of emotion, with the bees not being helicopters in the middle of the battlefield, and where everything is in effect pastoral and refined.
Yeah.
And even big-voiced people can do that.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. And a lot of sopranos like singing fidele, even though the text is better for a man. But in a sort of a sense, you've also got to remember that the melody at this point was never, ever sung by professional singers.
Right.
Fauré and Duparc, Chausson and Debussy always had gifted amateurs, and preferred them because they didn't have all the great star potentials of the Felia Litvins and the Jenny Linds and people like that. They preferred people who did what they were told what they had of the composer. They didn't want great artists taking their piece in Melbourne, messing with it, thank you. It was always a disaster. So they had the huge number of cultivated amateur singers, which was a special thing in the salons. So I very much doubt whether Fidile, when it was sung by a man in France, was ever sung by a voice like yours, which has got lots of really meaty vocal potential. And it's asking you to put that by choice and control slightly into a box.
Okay, yeah.
And see the wood for the trees. Don't get involved. And there's something about this whole style that is very similar to Fauré. And Fauré adored Duparc. They adored each other. They were very close friends. Everybody adored Duparc, as a matter of fact. He was the most wonderful man. And his inability to write anything after about 1883, living for the next 40 years in a state of unable to compose, was one of the great tragedies of music. But Duparc had a simplicity that's like Lydia. You know that song, da da dee, da 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 dee, this Greek thing. It's not da da dee, da 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 da. It's just elegance and Attic. That's the word, Attic taste, Greek. But thank you very much for both of you, and just keep everything even and simple. And it's amazing how the shape will just unroll of its own, in its own way, and do great things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Listeners, yes. Let's do the Ravel. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So we would like to start with Chanson de la Mariée, the first song of the Cinq Mélodies Populaires Grecques by Maurice Ravel.
You know it's the wrong title. This is not sung by La Mariée, it's sung by the husband, the bridegroom.
Yeah.
So it's not Song of the Married Girl, it's Le Réveil de la Mariée. That is the title that Ravel would have put in. It was a mistake in Durand. So it's the waking up of the fiancée. Not her song, because she doesn't sing anything.
Yes, exactly.
It isn't her mariée.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a young man who's greeting his bride-to-be on their wedding day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ravel was the only one of the French composers outside people who were in the Schola Cantorum like Vincent d'Indy to show the slightest interest in folk music. Folk music is not essentially a French song thing, but Ravel went through a phase of finding Scottish folk songs, English folk songs, and then these Greek folk songs. Fascinating, and the tune is very famous. It actually comes in, like Zorba the Greek, I think, has this, not the words, but the tune. Dum bum bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum bum ba. what Ravel meant to do, well, I think you're singing it it says piano, but it also says modéré. And if I was to get a metronome, that will be actually very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's got to be a little bit more, not wake up, my beautiful girl, wake up, but wake up. You've got to be a little bit more gentle and persuasive,
mm-hmm.
rather than a lot of it was very loud. And the piano, very nicely played and everything, but try it like this. That's it.
Yeah.
One. Return to me, please. Yeah. Once again. Yeah. Wake up, not wake up!
Okay.
And perdri, mignon. These are such loving things. You need to actually find a color that's right.
Okay.
And the tempo has a lot to do with it. Second verse, there's such a wonderful change of harmony when you suddenly get this. It's so lovely that look at the ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tenderness. Look at the ribbon I bought you. Wake up, ungrateful cow. You don't want that. You know,
Yeah.
it's actually got the intimacy of someone persuading, because in a sort of a sense, is the wedding really planned because he says the two houses will be allied at the end, or is he's wooing? I don't know. It may be that it's all arranged. It will certainly take place. It may be that he wants it to take place.
Mm-hmm.
But before I give you back, we'll just do the ruban, two bars before the ruban. I think you just have to, and that way, 1, 2. That's modéré,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to fast.
Yeah.
And perdri, mignon, and that, I think it's very easy to see this dieu as very active, but it's actually a great orchestrator's way of evoking a slightly orchestral texture via the piano. It's a sort of murmuring of strings or winds or something, but it's very clever, like all Ravel's textural things in piano writing are devilishly unique and clever. There was no one like him to do that. Just start it again. See, you can really add to that general dynamic an expression of longing, adding to the diction and the words, so it doesn't appear, but you can't make anything of the words at the tempo you started with.
Okay, yeah.
You can't make it tender enough, and actually the music is very tender. And autour de tes cheveux, you should see the feeling of he wants her beautiful hair to be caught around in this ribbon. And there's a sensuality in him enjoying the fact that he wants to get his hands into that hair. He wants that to be part of his loving experience. And have you ever thought that he doesn't want to wake up anybody else?
Yeah.
He's not standing in the middle of the street and saying, "Hey, you, wake up." He's saying, "Wake up, wake up." As in the Italian songbook, "Heb auf dein blondes Haupt und schlafe nicht." You know, I want you to hear the special message I have for you. And that was a much better color, because you were not aware of a Cacciaturian toccata effect. Do you know what I mean? You were aware of a murmuring, conjuring of sound that is extremely typical of Ravel. Let's do the next one.
Veni
What is your theory of what's happening in the song?
I think it's like a person looking over the city and looking at the different churches, the Virgin Saint of the Holy Virgin, and reflecting back on what happens in the second part, on the Greek massacre. That's what we kind of found out about it, and is saying, yes, it's just a remembrance of all these brave souls that were dying.
Why were they dying?
Well, they were slaughtered by what we found out. Yeah, under the Turkish rule in the island of Chios.
My criticism of it is it was actually very heartfelt and quite effective, but it was like an art song. You've got to remember that these are folk songs, and I think the tempo I proposed is believable as an art song. Actually, the faster tempo could also have worked, except I don't think it's right with the words. Here, people don't actually sing folk songs at those extended art song tempos. I prefer it, and it's only my opinion because there's nothing to prove it. La ba re di, da 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 di. To me, it's got something of the Cueilli de Lentisque, which is a later song, which is actually a work song. And you're right, it is the celebration of the Greek War of Independence in the 1820s. Byron died at Missolonghi. Wilhelm Müller was a supporter of the Greek War. There are lots of intersections between the Greek War and German leader as a matter of interest. But it is something where the Turks, who had occupied Greece, were driven out. And it was a very, very important moment for Greek independence. Try it again, just slightly faster. You don't, yeah, no arty little gaps between bars. Just keep it less arty, just actually the simplicity of folk music. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I think you should split the difference. Somewhere in between that and the tempo you started with, so that it still sounds a lament, but it's not really looking at the churches for the sake of looking at the churches, because the text says de l'église sidéraux and the église sainte, there are you united. It's obviously that in both of those graveyards are war heroes. So really it's about the war heroes from square one. And it's, again, in the later part of his life, Ravel, who was struck by this shut-in syndrome of being unable to express himself, as if he was a prisoner in his own body. It's the most terrible end. there's a wonderful story that Poulenc went with Madeleine Gray, who was a very famous singer, to do these very songs with Ravel sitting there. And she said, and Madeleine Gray said, I'm going to make a retardando there, and I'm going to do it this way. And he said, be careful, Ravel doesn't want that. And she said, Ravel is not in any position to want anything. He's just going to sit there because he's not going to even know what's happening. Anyway, they went and performed it to Ravel, and when Madeleine Gray did the retardando, he went, so he very well knew. There's a fastidiousness about all these people. I mean, it's no secret that Fauré and Ravel was knocked out by the Chanson d'Ève when he went to the first performance. And it was the same time as the first performance of the Histoire Naturelle, which is his greatest cycle, in which Fauré broke with him because Ravel didn't set the mute ease in that cycle, which went against a very long and established French tradition of the mute ease having musical value. And he did it just like prose, without any final ease being given musical value. And that was so scandalous at the time, so scandalous that there were people who walked out in horror. But what Ravel and Fauré have in common is an essential lucidity, a simplicity that surmounts all the chromaticisms and all the, I mean, it's also true of Debussy as a matter of fact, even though he wrote very much more ornate structures in his opera Pelléas. But in a sense, what you see as part of French music is this disinclination to impose onto the music your own passing, fleeting musicality. If it's not required of you, you don't do it. Whereas there's enormous pressure in the leader tradition for you to show that you care. I mean, it's that head thing, Voltaire and Pascal and all those great thinkers, that goes against the idea of the sentimentality. It's very rational. And although people think of the French as being a very romantic and starstruck, and English song is much more romantic than French song. It may sound to us luxuriating and opulent because of certain harmonies, but the employment of those harmonies in great composers like Debussy, not necessarily, I'm not talking about Alfred Bruneau and Charpentier. But when you get a great French composer, there's a sort of clarity and lucidity. And it's not fussy, and it doesn't break up musical shapes. It goes from A to Z. And it's delivered with a sort of a type of, this has nothing to do with me, this is what it is. The idea of was regarded as pretty obscene by the French temperament. You didn't impose on great music, you let great music speak for itself. Anyway, I think that's interesting for us English because we can do both perfectly well. We holiday in France and speak French and know enough about French life to understand the tradition, but we are cousins of the Germans, and we know very well what it is to become involved in the depths of some incredibly deep Lied. But I have French students who are almost outraged that I want them to draw on their own personal memories, sentimentalities, memories of love, projections of hope. You know, there's not, this is the music. They don't want to actually make it subjective. And you've got to prompt them to do any rubato because it's just there. Pierre Boulez, absolutely clean, precise, incredibly effective in the right way. And one's got to learn how to do that here. But very good. I think always go on a journey in a French song where you can see the end at the beginning, that you don't go walk about to get there, just go. Make it a direct route. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have a short break, apparently. Is that so? No, there's another question. Okay, sorry, yes. It's Elia and Lucas. Yeah. Do you want to do the boulanger?
Yes, yes. We have Lucas and Elia, and we will perform Au pied de mon lit by Lily Boulanger, a text poem by Francis Jam.
Have you sung more than one of these? Have you sung other songs from the Clarier dans le ciel?
No.
Yeah. It's very, this is music that to me is quite an acquired taste, not because the music isn't interesting or good. I've always had slight difficulty with the text.
Yeah.
It's the most, I think the text is extremely appealing to people who can easily identify with deep Roman Catholic faith. Francis Jam was exactly of that kind. The Boulangers, Lily and Nadia, were brought up in Russian Orthodoxy, which is even more of an extreme type of religiosity. And what we hear is talking about a young girl and the importance of an icon.
Yeah.
I mean, and your mother puts this thing at the end of the bed,
Yeah.
and a black Virgin, which is quite interesting because Poulenc composed a whole beautiful set of choral pieces called Litanie à la Vierge Noire for organ that Nadia Boulanger actually gave the first performance of. And long after Lily had died, I mean, Lily died many years before Nadia. And you love this Virgin. She says rather Italian, un peu italienne. And there's a sort of a type of sanctity. And as I say, it's an acquired taste. As far as I know, no other French song composers wanted to set Francis Jammes. I don't know any other Francis Jammes settings.
Yeah.
Are you yourself very religious? Do you have an icon of a Virgin?
Well, I'm from Spain, so my
Yeah.
country is very Catholic.
So it's part of how you were brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then I think that's fine because you can identify with the text and you understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to say the same as what I said to the people with Fidele, that you have to see its wholeness.
Yeah.
To take off on the second page when the triplets come in an entirely different tempo. When you suddenly go da 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 da, it's got to be the same crotchet, which may mean that you want to actually take the first page a little faster.
Yeah.
Because it says sans lenteur, but you first of all have to work out what is your ideal tempo for Vierge Loretana. I personally feel that it was a little fast, a little explosive, and that the beginning was a little slow. You make that a bit faster and make the second section a bit slower so that they meet in the middle and have the same tempo.
Yeah.
And then again, it's extremely French that it's, even though there is a middle section which explodes and suddenly becomes agité, that at the end of that, 16, 17, at the end of that you get back to tempo 1. So that's only a little interlude. Would you do exactly your ideal? Do the last page from Virgo Loretana vous avez. I would just do that and find the tempo that you find ideal for that.
Okay.
Actually, I don't like digne. Did you breathe before d'être?
D'être, yeah.
Not good.
Okay.
That doesn't sound at all natural. Yeah. Oh, je ne me sens pas digne d'être aimé. And that city is too much. It's aimé. Tiny little inflection. Not a great big fat writ.
Okay. Yeah.
I reckon that you need to go bum ba dee da 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 dum virgo la ta dee da vous savez. It would be lovely if you didn't have to breathe before vous savez, but if you have to, that's okay. It's just I think you need to find a breath that you can go ou je ne me sens pas digne d'être aimé in one.
Okay. I will try.
Yeah, let's do that again.
Yeah.
absolutely no excuse to go me réfléchir, breath, locker.
Okay, yeah.
That's really not. You breath, don't je parfum, breath, me réfléchir, breath, no.
No. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you have to actually, it's again, in a strange type of way, it's all about preserving unities and ongoing shapes rather than getting stuck. This has been the theme of everything we've done. Getting stuck. Instead of flying over it, you're getting involved in an exploration down in the basement. You've just got to, dans le parfum. You can breathe after parfum, but then the multi me réfléchit le. Try 2 breaths rather than 3.
Yes.
Just go say vous. Too long because you're not going to have any breath for cœur. Le réchi, me réchi, le.
Okay.
You don't want to actually get stuck on réfléchi.
Okay.
Once again.
Yes.
See, I reckon if you actually revitalised, you be vous dans le parfum, ne réfléchissez. It's enough.
Okay.
You're making heavy weather of these Malta writs. It's only, and then you get back au pied de mon lit, tu ne vas, je ne graisse. See if you can give me the beginning of those 2 bars in 1 breath.
Yes.
Right to the beginning.
Yes.
You see, the trade-off in French style is the poem is supremely sentimental. A virgin made of black ebony given by my mother. The French would hate that. Ma mère.
For ma mère, yeah.
You don't need to do.
No.
It's just simple and it just describes what it is. I once had a dear friend in France who told me that she was dying. And my response in French was, Marie-Louise, c'est une catastrophe. And she said, no, c'est triste. Not. You can get away with this hugely, religiously, only if it's done without a whole lot of incense and everything else added to it. It's actually just a description from the heart by a very religious girl, that's fine, but you don't, the mother doesn't have to say, we don't have to hear, oh my mother, oh my God, my mother, God bless her soul, she died 3 years ago and I still think of her. We don't want to hear that. The mother gave it to you.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear a great big deal about it. And did you see that we heard in that line, da dee da 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 dee da 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 da, that beautiful Phrygian mode. It's a beautiful, again, it's very modal because it's to do with the church. And Fauré also wrote in these modes. And remember, Fauré was hugely admired by Lily Boulanger, and Nadia studied with Fauré. It's just got to be what it is. So when you've actually got that fumise, par ma mère, you don't want to do massive ritordandos, massive underlinings. Oh my God, it's my mother who gave it to me. It's that type of attitude that's very un-French.
Yeah.
It's just simple. Just start it again, and I was glad you got through in one breath. It sounded better vocally. We actually got a sense of line instead of it being chopped up. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
You need to actually Vierge d'une religion, breath un peu italienne. You were only breathing before Duna because you were taking when you did it first, you were doing it far too slowly. Mm-hmm. So go for, and I love this virgin of a religion, and then you can actually, as you're thinking of it, maybe it's rather Italian. That's a little moment where he says, à l'aise, you're thinking, yes. You know, it does remind me of some Italian virgins that I've seen in Sicily or something like that.
Yeah.
So where j'aime cette vierge.
Okay. So breathe before un peu.
Yeah, and not before.
And not Genau. J'aime cette vierge.
No. You don't actually have an excuse there to get faster. It's absolutely the same tempo. You don't think, yes, comme un frémissement, that's the mood. It's nothing to do. She doesn't say plus vite.
Yeah.
You must understand what architects these French composers are. Cool-headed architects. A lot of Germans write music down, but they've got a feeling and are not very clear about what they want to do. You know, particularly, it's a whole work doing mediocre German composers and trying to get their music to work. Because I once asked Benjamin Britten what his definition was of a great composer, and he said, a great composer is someone who can put down on a page what he wants, nothing more, nothing less. It seems unbelievably true to me. You're never in doubt if you know how to read Schubert, how to read Fauré, how to read Bach. But, and the whole ritualistic thing of this in the mode becomes a mantra because the tempo behind it is the same. So instead of little bits and pieces scattered around in different tempo, it becomes one musical construction. Yeah. Very good that you did the triplets now, very strongly related to the main tempo. You have a very glamorous voice, and I think, yeah, it's really is a, it's not only a beautiful voice, but it has a certain glamour, which is a lucky thing, because you can't manufacture that in terms of what one is given as an actual instrument.
Thank you.
So just go from Virgo for the big climax. Virgo la da ba ba. Are you going to give her a bar?
Yeah.
Or 2 bars?
2 bars.
would prefer Virgo Larentana, breath debout.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's very elegant to breathe before dawn.
Dawn of, yeah, danza. Yeah.
You just have to work to keep that in time. It's not just a free-for-all that you can do your own thing with. The invisible hand of the composer is behind you, and she's actually required of qui lourdement les pavillons qui lourdement sont les pavillons qui lourdement sont d'hommes really also should be in one. You need to start in taking it slightly faster, testing yourself in terms of being able to not just take breaths whenever you feel like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really needs to actually get that sort of interconnection. I fear that we're going to have to stop because I think, yes, we're going to stop, unfortunately. But I think the really taxing parts, may I say, which are the high notes, are your best. I hear the song full of people feeling, but they really don't sound good when it comes to the high notes. And you do. So that's what's good. But actually, clean up all the religious sentimentality by just saying the words and not becoming weak-kneed with sentiment as soon as they come. Like your mother, you don't actually have to. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Remember that Lily Boulanger had been brought up. She's a curious case. She's obviously wildly talented, although one might argue with Nadia, who said, when I think of the great conductors, Bach, Beethoven, Lily Boulanger. She used to say things like that. It's understandable she had such an enthusiasm for her sister. But although she used a very bold and expressive canvas, and you actually feel her Russian blood, and you feel that she is not just a French woman, but she's a French Russian. And there's a sort of something of that temperament in her background, you know, as Nadia was terrifying in a very Russian manner. She was like a babushka. But in a sort of a sense, underneath that all there is fastidious, never to be sentimental, never to be exaggerated, never everything to be reduced to its greater simplicity. And if you find yourself taking breaths in wrong places in a piece like this, or in awkward places, it's because you haven't got the tempo right. And you're probably doing it too slow and doing too many rits and getting labored and getting into things. The whole thing falls into place once you give a rigorous bit of rationality to what makes it hang together. You see what I mean? Which is just to look at it without sentiment, very coldly, and analyze. And just like Fidele, it's very similar in the sense that it's a big sprawling piece, but it's all, apart from the agité, it's all in one tempo. And it rises and falls by finding something that works from beginning to end in that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could you start with the one that we haven't had so far?
Start with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Start with the Quel Galon.
Yes. So something happened with the song selection. So we also have the three first songs from the Mélodie grecque by Ravel. So we start with the third one, Quel galant mais comparable.
Quel galant qu'on voit passer des dames basiliques. Vois pas deux hommes à ceinture, pistolets, sabres aigus. Et c'est toi que j'aime.
Thank you, Axel. Tell me the picture you have. What's happening in the song, in your imagination?
Well, there might be a man who's trying to impress a woman, maybe amongst a big crowd, and that he sort of tries to show off his qualities, and he's very, very, very confident in what he has to offer, or what his values and his appearance, maybe. Yeah.
Dame Vasiliki is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you normally call a pretty girl Dame Vasiliki?
Perhaps not.
I've always had a different picture. That Madame Vasiliki is a proprietress of a house of women. And he comes in, well known, and he flirts with her. It's you who I love. Come on. And that maybe he's going to go one stage further into the house, and once he's past the door of the dame, who is the sort of, because basically it's very rude. The pistolet at the belt. You were talking about, may I say, equipment?
Yeah.
And it's actually full of that. I don't think you would actually be having this type of very rude conversation with just a girl in the street.
Yeah.
And I think that you wooing her, hello, Granny, you're looking gorgeous today. You know I love you best. Oh, get away with you, dreadful young man. My Sophie, my whatever the lady is, my Tiano, whatever the girl maybe would, you know. That is a picture. I mean, I see it quite Rabelaisian. I see it naughty.
Sure.
And I think you could actually be naughtier.
Okay.
And even da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and brum, 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 brum implies something naughtier than just a normal flirtation with a girl.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at me, what I'm, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's flirtation, and the way that young men can flirt with grannies is very special. It's very special because it's tender, it's affectionate, but it's also fun, not to be taken seriously. And when you say, oh, yes, well, you know, yes, I want to see the other girls, but it's you that I love, really. I mean, get away with you, you cheeky little beggar. It's that sort of thing.
Okay.
Well, I'm only sharing with you a picture I have, but there's nothing that actually proves that that is the picture. Except that when he says, let me just get the right words. Do you see hanging from my belt the pistols and the sharp sword?
Yeah, fair enough.
Sabre aigu. And it's you I love. Dame Vasiliki has also got to be a bit of a rogue too, make no mistake. That's the other thing. You wouldn't speak like that to a respectable older woman. very much a song of seaports and bordellos, and it's a sailor who's a regular on all his visits into, when the boat comes home. That's how I see it. But you may have a more sincere version, which is perfectly valid if you really want to be in love with Dama Vasiliki. But I think it's more piquant. Let's try it again.
Quel galant comparable, d'ordre ce qu'on voit passer, dit Dame Vasiliki. Vois pas du sa massature, pistolet et sabre aigu. Et c'est toi que j'aime.
The only thing I would argue with that is that he doesn't write Dame Vasiliki. Don't rubato that.
Okay.
Because he writes a rallentando on the next page. Et c'est toi que j'aime. Naughty boy. Yeah, you've got a most attractive voice, and making songs meaningful always depends on having a picture. In fact, they call them storyboards. When people are making movies, they do a lot of drawing and a lot of envisaging what the movie is going to look like via drawings. So there are artists who specialize in drawing what the shot is going to look like before the shots are actually taken. And Schwarzkopf used to tell me that the only way that she could sing a song was by having a very, very clear mental picture of what was happening. And she said, when she lost the picture, someone coughed in the audience. When audiences see a singer's imagination, they don't know what exactly is in the imagination, but they know there's something there, and that's what's fascinating. When you're talking about someone you love, and you are reaching into yourself to summon a real emotion about someone you really love, no one knows who it is, what it is. It's your business. But they are aware it exists. And that makes you very fascinating, because you are sharing yourself. You're not sharing the details, but you are sharing. And very, very, very brave singers are the ones who draw on their own pictures and their own imagination somehow at the same time. Otherwise, it can appear to be a little bit theoretical. This could happen. Is it much to do with me? Where do I fit in? And the I, the fitting in of an individual who's having an experience, is what actually makes, what I think draws people to singers, because they feel that you are being open enough to share. Open enough. And all sorts of scenarios come up, and if you don't have a storyboard, it's difficult to imply that you've got a movie. And if you don't have a movie, it's all theoretical. That's why some of the most arresting singers are not at all educated in terms of poetry, background, literature. They don't know all the facts, but they know what it means to them. And that instinct is one of the most valuable things that a singer can have. Role play. That element of, if I was you, if I were, You're going to be singing a lot of things that don't apply to anything you've experienced, particularly as a young person, may I say, when your experience is going to be, in comparison to someone 20 years older, limited. But if it's very strong, what you might not do, what you would do in the circumstances, what you can imagine yourself doing in the circumstances, the whole thing comes to life. And it's otherwise one's actually being an oratorio singer, which is to hold a book and say, this is what happened in the book. And that's why a lot of people are happier with oratorio, because it doesn't relate to them so much as to the word of the Lord and the story. And yes, you can get their devotion to God and their horror at the crucifixion, but it's circumscribed, and that's why reading an oratorio is acceptable, because it's not your emotion. Close the book, it's only you, that's the challenge. You've offered the rest of the Greek song, so let's hear another one.
Yeah. One, the first or the second?
Which would you prefer?
First one? Yeah, first one. Which is, yeah, Le Réveil de la Mariée.
Le Réveil de la Mariée, yeah. I've got that crossed out in a score by Bernard himself, who wrote in Le Réveil de la Mariée. Yeah. But anyway, you're waking up someone that you would very much like to marry.
Réveille-toi, réveille-toi, perdrix mignonne. Réveille-toi, réveille-toi, perdrix mignonne. Ouvre ma tête zen. Ouvre ma tête zen. Trois draps de beauté, mon cœur allait brûler. Trois draps de beauté, mon cœur allait brûler. Voilà le ruban d'or que je t'apporte. Voilà le ruban d'or que je t'apporte. Pour le nouer autour de tes cheveux. Pour le nouer autour de tes cheveux. Si tu veux, ma belle, viens nous marier. Dans nos deux familles, tous sont alliés.
Thank you. Beautifully done, beautifully played, very nicely sung. My only feeling is that's a bit fast for a modere. But funnily enough, it's so we don't hear, it rustles along without being full of attack and full of clatter. So that seems to me, I think a slightly slower tempo sounds a little bit more like a plea. That's the only thing. Réveille, réveille, please do it. Rather than you can take the view that it's just like a folk song that everybody sings, rather than it being a subjective song experience of a real man. And I think there's an argument that that works. It's a folk song, and it's not necessarily a song about a boy who really has hope. But there you have what is the definition of a folk song. Most folk songs have, even if it's the ploughboy or a Britain folk song or anything, have a certain element in arrangements of art song. And that's the point of a Ravel, a Britain, a Vaughan Williams, a Percy Grainger, a Kodály, setting a folk song so that it becomes of use as an art song. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the apparatus of setting this music, as it were, to such a sophisticated element. Is there any doubt at all that she's going to say yes?
Doubt that she's going to say yes.
Well, I mean, the only thing about your song is that you don't expect her to say no.
Yeah.
That's your. I can strongly see that it's out of the question that she should say no. Oh. And again, it's within your right. If that's modéré, however, I'd like to hear what vite would be. That's the other thing, you see. I don't think it would be possible to do it any more fleet than that. Let's hear the next one. These are things to weigh up. Whether one wants in that accompaniment to be a whirring machine, or whether one wants to hear the whirring quality, very, as I say, beautifully played and good control of within the key mechanisms. But it glides in a way that, well, it's taste. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, if everybody had the same taste, what a dull world of music this would be. There has to be room for certain wonderful things to be seen in different ways by different artists. And that's what's difficult about a masterclass. Because I can give my taste, but it's not the same as everybody else's. And my enthusiasms and passions are not the same as everybody else's. There's no right way or wrong way. When you get a certain level of achievement, and here I would say that with both singer and pianist we did, then it becomes a matter of taste, a matter of individual fantasy. Let's hear the lamba. Okay, again, beautifully done. But it's very much from the point of view of someone who is extremely saddened by the thought, right?
Yeah.
Try it now with a faster tempo as someone who was a young man extremely proud of the patriotic achievements of the people who came before him in the Greek struggle for independence. Not someone who's heartbroken about all these people, but plus brave. That's the clue for me. It's actually, and particularly funnily enough, it may be sexist to say so, when a woman sings it, it works better heartbroken than when a man does. Do you not think I would not give my life for Greece if it was asked? Look at them, this array of heroes. It's got a sad incantation, but it's not, oh my God, this is sad. And in a way, patriotic pride in death and the achievements of all the people who've laid down their lives is very, very much part of this type of Greek. Well, it's a different type of manliness from Quel Galant. But if you think of the same person maybe visiting a house of ill repute, and there is nothing greater in all literature than the visits to houses of ill repute, written by, to my mind, the greatest Greek poet of the 20th century, Constantin Cavafy. This is a poet of, he was Greek, but he lived in Alexandria, so a lot of his work is written in Egypt, but in the Greek community in Egypt. But a lot of, some of the most amazingly open sexual writing in all literature, Cavafy. I mean, the man is really, really up there as one of the really great 20th century poets, in my opinion. I only wish I could read him in the original Greek. Look at what my country has achieved in terms of its sacrifice to be the free country that it is now. With that as a picture, do it again. You'd have to do it slightly faster, not quite so down in the mouth. Yes, I find that more convincing than the actual heartbroken version, because you don't truly become heartbroken. Well, yeah, visiting the cemeteries of the fallen in France can be extremely upsetting, but the emotion is these people have died to keep civilization and to cause the perishing of evil that spread across Europe. I mean, it's a sacrifice that one's proud of, in a way, even though it's tragic. Also, where are you? Are you standing on a hill?
Yeah.
If I'm standing next to you as an Englishman and I say, what the hell has your country ever done? In terms, you know, since Thermopylae, your country's done nothing. I mean, it's all, you know, since Alexander the Great, and you say, come here, there. You look at that. It wasn't actually located. And that's what I meant by a storyboard. Imagining where you are, how you are, what it is that you're doing. And you know what? You needn't tell anybody what you're doing. But the fact that you are doing it, you can never underestimate the power of that inner thought while you think of something. That's something that, where you are cast in a game. I don't know why everybody stops playing games after a certain age, but when children meet together, you be this, I be that. Whether it's cowboys and Indians or this, the sofa becomes a rock. I mean, in a way, children have the most amazing invention when they invent games amongst themselves. It's something along the same line of taking a song and inventing a game so that it has, as it were, a secret meaning for you that turns that light on, that lamp that Schwarzkopf talked about. When her lamp went out, someone in the audience moved because they knew they were not spellbound. And should I tell you one of her greatest achievements? I've never met another artist like it. She could have a very great accompanist doing the most amazing postlude in a long Wolf song, and nobody took their eyes off her. Nobody looked at the pianist because she appropriated the entire piano music, belonged to her, and was part of her fantasy. So, and I mean, maybe it would be jolly nice. Oh, thank you, you finished. Now let's see how the pianist does. You know, that's pretty standard, but a person who has this imagination, bucking up the imagination is one of the greatest things for a pianist, or a pianist equally, or a singer. Inventing scenarios that you don't want to defend in a book, right? You don't want to actually necessarily tell me, but it should be something that you want to share. And people will say, there's something there. There's something deep. There's something committed. What is committing? It's committing yourself to the game. All recitals are a game. There are 20 items and there are 20 different scenarios. And the ability to move in and out of the various exigencies of the game, of what's happening in the poem, what's happening in the music, what's happening between piano and voice, that's one of the things that makes a very, very arresting situation. Anyway, I think we've had our time, Axel. In fact, we've had a little bit more of our time. So thank you very much for doing those 3 songs. I'm glad we heard all 3. Thank you. Hello. Again.
Hey.
Thank you. I'll pick one and you pick one. So you pick one first.
Okay, then the Debussy.
Okay.
Hello, this is Joan, I'm Anton, and we'd like to perform Romance by Debussy and a text by Paul Bourget.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I've got nothing to say against that in terms of style. You were admirably limpid. You didn't attempt to sort of put, it was measured, you did what it said on the tin, which I think in this song the temptation to mess around with a whole lot of other stuff is quite strong, because it's written in the style of Debussy's teacher Massenet. This is almost the Massenet formula, apart from the fact it doesn't have a culminating high note about 5 bars from the end that makes us all melt, which is what Rinaldo often does in the style of Massenet. C'est l'heure exquise, things like that. It's a secret. You go along with the murmuring thing, and then you just have one high note, and everybody goes, oh, how divine. It's very interesting about Massenet. He did 7 volumes of Mélodie in the Hamel edition. Fauré did only 3. 7 volumes, and you can't for the love of anything find them anymore. They've disappeared. There used to be a woman who ran the Massenet Society and occasionally gave ill-advised recitals at the Wigmore Hall of Massenet songs that nobody had ever heard of, and she was absolutely convinced that Massenet was a great song composer. What really makes Massenet different from Hahn or Debussy is that he had an absolute ability to write terrible verses for music. He found all things in ladies' magazines of the worst possible kind. He didn't lift his game by finding. Bourget is a very respectable, well-known poet. I mean, Bourget was set by Chausson, Bourget was set by a number of people. He's not the best known, he's no Baudelaire, he's not Verlaine, but he's something. And Debussy, even as a young man, is writing something. So, stylistically also very nicely played. I would just say it needs more line. It strikes me as being a bit low for you. And yet maybe you don't fancy the 1 or 2 high notes.
It would limit me in the terms of color, the choice of color that I'm able to do in these high notes.
If you want it in that tessitura, you have to actually work harder at making more line and more sound. Because it's so intimate that we could actually sit around you here and hear you say it. But if you're actually going to be singing into a hall, it needs to have more penetration, more line, and more intention of describing. I mean, after all, for all the intimacy of song recitals, we are still peddling something to an audience. And we've still got to consider reaching the back row. You were never a tenor, right? Or you were what would you call yourself? You were always a baritone. Yeah. And what would you consider your most comfortable or last comfortable high note?
Like an F or F sharp?
Yeah. Can you do those piano and forte, or mainly if you have to forte?
F is like, I think maybe F, depending on the vowel.
Well, that I think is a very wise answer, because you know, great singing depends on any note in any note in any vowel. That's really the sign. There are some vowels that are harder than others in a high note. Fischer-Dieskau's greatness was his ability to go D, E, F, F sharp, G in that whole area with great ease on any vowel. And still produce a sound that was properly projected and not in falsetto.
Yeah, I think with this one it's not terribly low for me, but it's in that register quite hard for me to mix and to have it not too chesty.
In your natural desire to make the effect of the sensual effect of the décadence, I call it that. You know, it's a very it's a very Wildian, it's a very Art Nouveau poem. It's very much a poem of the end of the 19th century. What with it? Souls, l'âme évaporée et souffrante, l'âme douce, l'âme odorante, les divine lilies. I mean, this is all very, you can see Art Nouveau designs, which I collect in the garden of your thought. Où dans les vents l'ont-ils chassé, cette âme adorable des lignes? Dans les suavités célestes. Well, this is high-flown poetry. It's almost high-flown poetry to a point of parody of the sort of the exquisite, of des esseintes, of Huysmans à rebours, of Dorian Gray and his portrait. Dorian Gray would have understood a Bourget poem like this extremely well. In fact, what's interesting about this song is it's absolutely a textbook case of what a lot of people consider French song to be, which is slightly whole tone scale, slightly misty, very sensual. The middle section where the actual quavers get da 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 da. I mean, you know, English people, particularly English people around about the turn of the century, were absolutely enamored of this very, very un-English, sensual Frenchness. And that's what I admire about you. You didn't actually overdo that. You just gave it was a much more simple performance.
Could I try again?
I think you actually have to create a bigger stage picture if you can vocally.
Yeah.
Don't try and sing it too softly.
Okay.
Because it's actually, it cuts out, there's huge pictures here, celestial, suffering souls. It's not in a tiny garden like some of the forêt we did in my recital is so intimate. But this is fête d'espoir, d'amour fidèle, de beatitude, peace. This is grand. This is talking about rather big things, as a matter of fact. Try it again. That's an entirely different ballgame and much better.
Yeah.
Because although these are lovely words to recite in your first intimate way, we long for the buzz in the ear of the vocal sound. That is the food and drink of the singing fan. The buzz that goes in the sound of humanity, the thing that the human voice has that no one else or nothing else has.
Yeah.
And it's more of a picture of you than any aesthetical response that actually thinks that you should actually rather give a reading of it. I mean, Bernac did say to me when I said to Bernac, why did you become a singer? He said, in order to recite the poems I love with heightened intensity. But that does mean heightened intensity. And that's what you need to do by the engagement of your voice of line. The food and drink of the person who's come to hear you sing, gratefully accepting that buzz in the ear that will set your voice aside from any other voice. It will make you the individual instrument that you are. people have a longing to hear that individuality.
Yeah.
And that's what you must work at, something that may seem a bit unrefined, a little bit self-seeking, a little bit vain, not quite aesthetic enough, but actually people want to hear your voice. And you know what? Because you have a voice and I don't, means that if you succeed as a singer in this repertoire, there is nothing I can do at the piano that is going to interest anybody as much as they are interested in the sound of your voice. That's why your name's in big letters. That's why you get more money than I do. That's why, I mean, I've got a longer career than you. Singers don't go on quite as long, but, you know, that's a nice prize, you know, lots more work, while you have your villa in Capri with your ill-gotten gains as a singer.
Not yet.
But I mean, you know, that's the gamble. The gamble is that people will want to bathe in your voice. And that is an extremely sensual reaction. Some voices turn people on, and some voices the same voices turn other people off. It's so individual. It's like wine. It's a palate thing. It's a tonal palate thing. And just there, in what you did, I heard traces, nascent traces of something individual. And that's what you must nurse. Despite all the hard work you do about poetry, and despite all the hard work you do about exquisite, you know, understanding of the text or language or whatever. Can I actually kindly hear either the Fauré or the Poulenc? Which would you prefer?
The Poulenc?
Right.
Le sergent sorviere qu'elle les plus rafraîchis flandinés, le sergent sorviere qu'elle entre les buissons étendus. A gagné la croix de Saint-Georges, les plus rafraîchis flandinés. A gagné la croix de Saint-Georges, son pécule sous son bonnet. Pour sa bipotere rouge, les plus rafraîchis flandinés. Pour sa bipotere rouge, puis son rat se met en tous ces copains morts, les plus rafraîchis flandinés. Il revoit tous ces copains morts qui sont pourris dans les guillemets. Ils ne verront plus leur village, les plus rafraîchis flandinés. Ils ne verront plus leur village, ni le calme plus des fumines. Les gars, à marche au crève, les plus rafraîchis flandinés.
I'm sure you looked at the metronome, Mark.
Yes.
Poulenc is absolutely notorious for over-writing his fast tempi.
I noticed that he himself does it slower.
Yes, it's because when you get a real singer with it, it says, Francis, I cannot get the emotion over at this particular tempo. And he's gone ahead and published it as soon as he's written it and printed, and then suddenly he works on it and he realizes, And there's a reason. In this particular case, it's the fact that the poor man coming back from the war is not a spring chicken, and he's not nearly as perky as you make him. He's a tragically broken figure.
Yeah.
And I can't hear that in the film, you know.
I see,
He's actually shell-shocked, the poor man.
Yeah.
I thought brought this to show you. This is the first edition of the poetry by Maurice von Beur, Chanson de la Grande Hune. And he writes amical hommage à chanson de marin et de laboureur. And this is the crucial year, 1942, right in the middle of the German occupation. And actually, there are all the things from the, there it is. But the secret is that it's the most terrible, I think this one dates from contemporary things of someone who's been a sergeant in the fight to keep the Nazis back. And it was a terribly humiliating defeat for the French armies. The Nazis just came from an area which no one expected them to come through. They were all waiting on the Maginot Line, and the Germans just laughed at that. They came through another route, which actually went through Poulenc's famed Touraine and Sées and all those other things. They just, and many French people, Poulenc was called up actually. He actually spent some time, Bernard was called up. They were eventually given an ability to give recitals instead, because they were both, let's face it, middle-aged men. So Poulenc was 41, and he was called up and in uniform and sent down to Cahors. So the person who's coming back has seen the most terrible loss, and it's also humiliation. And he's not walking like that. He's trudging like a soldier who's broken. And that's probably why Bernard, when they actually did the performances of this, said, I can't do it at 138 francs. And it's the number of times that Poulenc actually does these hugely, he did like writing fast things, but you know, a singer with a lot of words has got to actually make the words live. You can't actually just make it gabble, gabble, gabble. And that's what I felt was happening with you. The words were too not felt. It was just like, it was almost like funny, this poor sergeant. There's got to be a feeling of the humanity of the man's situation and a truly patriotic engagement with the fact that what he's gone through is sad. There's another song, Jean Martin, which is about working class resentment. And in fact, the opening, the Chanson de Claire Tamis of this cycle, is about a horrible man in a local aristocratic situation who's died and is absolutely hated by the peasants, who is treated as serfs. So von Beur had a slightly left-wing edge, which, to tell you the truth, Poulenc, he wasn't actually a right-wing person, but he was from rich stock and had no interest in being part of the Princesse de Polignac so married, you know, the Front Populaire of Leon Blum. He was not into left-wing politics. The idea of Poulenc actually as being a member of the resistance is so laughable. But he did allow it to be put out that he was, completely inaccurately, because after the war, everybody wanted to have been in the resistance. It was a very important thing to have been in the resistance. And the number of false claims that people were in the resistance and actually weren't was pretty widespread. Those, les pieds gonflés sifflants donnaient entre les buissons étonnés, à gagner la croix de Saint-Georges, les pieds gonflés, à gagner la croix. What did he do to win that St. George's Cross? It means nothing. He obviously was brave under fire. But, just do it again and try and think of him. Instead of brushing it aside, be a little bit more involved in his sadness.
And slowly, you say.
Le sergent se revient de guerre, les plus afflessifs flanés, le sergent se revient de guerre entre les bisons étendés.
If you get that tempo is better. Make lots of line D.
Le sergent se revient de guerre, les plus afflessifs flanés, le sergent se revient de guerre entre les bisons étendés. A gagné la croix de Saint-Georges, les plus afflessifs flanés, a gagné la croix de Saint-Georges, son pécule sous son bonnet. Pour sa pipotere rouge, les plus afflessifs flanés, pour sa pipotere rouge, puissant se met à pleurer. Il revoit tous ses comme morts, les plus afflessifs flanés. Il revoit tous ses comme morts, qui sont pourris dans les guillemets. Ils ne verront plus leur village, les plus afflessifs flanés.
That's right. This is the best. This is to do it. And he's trudging home, humiliated and lost, the medal meaning nothing. He's got a terrible infection, probably lung infection that's causing his nose. And the pathos of what he's feeling, having gone through this trauma, is then counteracted by pull yourself together and keep marching. But if you don't, if you don't actually fully engage with the man's trauma, I can't tell you the difference that you make when you sing legato, when we actually hear a bit of your voice rather than It makes a huge, fantastic difference when you give us something of the voice.
Yeah.
And actually, you have a lot more voice than I. If I just heard you sing that first Debussy song, and just heard that in an audition, I would never believe that you have the reserves that you actually have. You should actually use these, because immediately you did that legato version I asked for, we all were more interested in what you were singing about, because legato has a way of opening the doors of the singer's soul to the listening ear. It's the lubrication between the notes that matter, not the notes themselves. It's the connecting tissue between the notes that actually makes the real meaning. As Bernard used to say to students in the masterclasses, I said, sing! We become so involved with poetry and all the rest of it that the sheer animal act of singing, the thing that gives you endorphins and makes you feel better after you've had a good sing, which no pianist feels better in the same way after playing as a singer feels once they've had that bodily mechanism engaged. Why do you think everybody goes and sings in choirs for nothing? You don't get a bunch of piano players going together for nothing. Singing for nothing, the pleasure, the sheer pleasure in singing means that millions of people throughout the world engage themselves in projects where they sing for nothing. And, just keep singing. I've got to carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So what would you like to start with?
The Poulenc, if that's okay.
Say.
Say.
Yeah. Okay. The thing about, say, is that a lot of people tend to revel in its gorgeousness with all those sequences. You didn't do that, which was good. It's a song of patriotic loss, and the only false step I felt was that portato, where you held the A flat too long, and then when the made an unintentionally funny effect. Again, it's the sort of thing that he would have written before actually rehearsing it. He had a way at this point of getting his songs very quickly into print because it meant money, and he was extremely keen on money. And he had an incredible history with all the publishers of getting the best deals. He was an incredibly, more than anybody realized, quite a canny and not always honest businessman. Yeah, the whole thing is, it was well done. As always, one wants to do the same thing but better, just a little bit more. I think it could have a certain vocal amplitude. What could I say? I mean, in terms of the actual playing, I think sometimes the repeated, what the French call, what Poulenc calls batterie, could be actually more within the key, because we are hearing sometimes punk, punk, punk a little bit. Poulenc had this way of effacing. If you hear him play the piano, which is the best way that you can possibly listen to get his style. I mean, if only we had Schubert playing, if only we had records of Wolf playing, which we might have had if he hadn't died so young. It would be wonderful. We've got records of Strauss playing, but the point is that Poulenc and Britten are two important song composers who are very well documented in terms of their song repertoire. And Poulenc had this very beautiful touch, and not every note is to be heard. For example, in Voyage à Paris, in Penalité, you can get pianists go dim pam pam, dim pam pam. And Poulenc, he doesn't exactly leave out some of the intervening notes, but he doesn't exactly play them full tilt either. I'll give you a demonstration of what I mean. I'm not too tired to do it. So, this is the temptation to do. It's so that there's more legato. Actually disguising some of the middle stuff so that there's not so much ictus. And when you have, let's carry on for a bit. Sorry, it's too late in the day. not actually leaving the notes out.
Sure.
I'm actually playing them, but I'm, you know, the literal thing, bum, 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 is what the worst performance of Poulenc ever is Fischer-Dieskau and the members of the Berlin Octet doing Le Bal Masqué, which is a happy-go-lucky cantata from the early 1930s. And it's appalling because they all play mercilessly all the right notes. And there's no razzmatazz because it's literally all correct. And it's heartless and not right. It's like, you know, you don't want all of it. And that whole thing of cultivating playing within the key like that for not essential notes that are just harmonic filling so that we hear them, but we don't hear them actually struck.
Yes, yeah.
So that it's actually a question of well, it depends on how responsive the double action, the escapement mechanism is. But it's actually important. And I think actually I liked that better when you were more vocally engaged, because I could see that you were giving more voice there.
Yeah.
That you, and I just, if I go from A to Et les âmes des âmes, and I, Et les âmes. No, far too long. It's not about your A flat, you see. You've got to let that A flat pass, otherwise it suddenly becomes everybody's worst idea of a person who's happy with an A flat and wants to sit there forever. It's only in the middle of a word, délassé. It is, oh my friend. That's enough. You don't have to do moltissimo. But I mean that it's that actually almost like brushing the keys.
Do I apply that same principle to the bass? Because of course I'm doubling her line, but is the bass...
the bass is slightly different. No, it's both. So
yeah, okay.
You catch the key on the coming up. No, you know, after a while, if you practice it enough, it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
And particularly in the style where there's something incredibly boîte, which is to say nightclubby about. Which doesn't have the same nostalgia, that same sort of ease of brushing the keys down the corridors of 1940s memories, old war films, old. And Poulenc has something, you know, when he plays even his solo piano music, like the first nocturne, the people who do it, the great solo pianists who get all the notes, and they don't nearly make the effect he makes with his own music, you know, and he's not as good a pianist as, you know, Collard and Thibaudet and all these people who are much better pianists, but he has an idea of sound which evokes in lovers of his music a type of nostalgia. There's very, very few composers who can equal Poulenc in a sort of a type of nostalgie de la rue as well as Bou. But it's a sort of old Paris as one might have imagined it to be in some imaginary magical way. And of course he is an intensely Parisian composer, as being amongst the very few composers who was actually born in Paris and was through and through Parisian, in the sense that he regarded anybody who didn't live there as somehow incredibly deprived. However much he liked coming to London or going to America, if you didn't live in Paris, you were one of the world's, unfortunates. And I mean, that's the love. I mean, again, it's what has been the theme of today when I've been talking. It's don't forget to sing. And there are certain moments of strength and support where you can encourage that, because your playing, as beautiful as it was both not feathery enough at the right times and not quite supportive enough at other times. Particularly when it comes to doing that pas de deux, which exists when we've got to almost figuratively put our hands through under the piano and support. An accompanist is very like a pas de deux partner in the sense that he appears to be doing nothing, and as the soloist does all these wonderful variations and decorations, but actually he's holding her tight and making everything possible by the solidity of his support. Now, what else would you like to do? You've got the two other things. You've got, of course, the mirage.
We've already done the Ravel, so shall we do the mirage? Well, somebody else has done it. Two people have done the Ravel, so.
Yeah, you've got the same Ravel, Quel Galant.
Yeah.
I prefer to hear a bit of the Cygne.
Yeah.
This is going back to my passion for late Fauré. And this is an absolutely remarkably beautiful song. It's about a swan on the water. I thought you might be interested to know or to see the book from which it came, Raymond's Mirage. And there's this one. And it's actually the first song, and it's got a verse that Fauré cut about the serpent.
And at the end as well.
And of course, yeah, two cuts really. But it does keep in China and America,
I saw that.
which is really wonderful. I mean, I really love the way that, in fact, Fauré sees himself as the swan, regal and untouchable amongst birds, but solitary. I mean, but in a way, as an old man, and it's really to do with that he's not going to go out of his physical zone. He's not going to go touring in America. You know, he came to England. I said to somebody earlier, Sarah Fox didn't know that there was an all-Fauré concert given in 1908 at the Wigmore by Fauré, who accompanied Jeanne Ronet in the Chanson d'Ève, sponsored by a man called Frank Schuster, who was Elgar's patron. And Fauré was taken up to Manchester to hear the first performance of Elgar's Second Symphony. And history does not relate what he thought of that. But it's the mixing of two impossibly different worlds. But the piano quintet of Fauré and the piano quintet arrangement of the Bon Chanson were both conceived for the same concert. And Fauré only arranged the Bon Chanson for piano quintet so that the piano quintet would have something other to do for the Elgar premiere. Okay, let's see what happens. Thank you. You gave that a devoted performance, and that the fact that you've memorized it and loved it. Do you do the whole cycle or just that one piece?
Just one for now. We've done this one. I've done one of the other ones, but
let me just show you something about it. The main thing is you have a very good. You play the piano very well, but you've got to get a little bit more accustomed to demanding more of what the piano can respond under what the Germans call Anschlag, touch. You play a bit like an organist. Have you ever played the organ?
No, he has.
You're the organ. Yes, right. Well, it's unfair to say that because, you know, there are great elements of legato and great elements of great subtleties of playing the organ. I just think it's all a bit active. Spending less energy, that's all.
Yeah.
And the balance is better because it's pretty low for her. And I think you're insisting on, I mean, in a sense, there's a certain type of languid, what's the word? Oh, I can't find the right word, but you shouldn't actually be on the case.
Yeah.
It's just there.
I think I'm giving a lot more sound than usual just to keep the line going.
Yes.
It's not necessary, I suppose.
I think you don't have to make excuses for those pieces if you have to provide something that, if not there, otherwise people are going to find it boring.
Yeah,
It makes its own hypnotic effect without you worrying about that. And be very careful that when you begin your 16th notes, you don't suddenly get faster.
Right.
Dum, bum, ba, 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 ba. But it's very easy to da, 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 da. Yeah. But it's there are 100 wonderful harmonic changes and miracles in this that go by without people hearing or knowing, and that's one of the sadnesses of Fauré's life and his final period, that what is happening is, it's like producing a perfume that only the greatest nose can smell the greatness of, and which doesn't appear very different from ordinary everyday perfume to the man in the street. In fact, it's a rather less pallid. It's more pallid. It's not as striking as a strong, well-known perfume, but its subtlety is what, yeah. Well, you're either a convert or not. And I think at the end of the day, I can say it's clear that I am. But in fact, it's become stronger as I've got older, because you realize this sort of sense of effortless thing. I'm going to have to stop, but I thank you. You are a wonderfully honest, direct singer, very good for this repertoire, because you don't want to surround it with superfluous curlicues. You just actually, your good brain organizes everything, and you just do what's there. That's what I think the best French singers were always trained to do. They didn't see themselves as divas, and no one, Debussy, Fauré, none of them wanted anything to do with famous divas, because they thought that would be the death of their music. Anyway, thank you very much.
So magnificent.